market deteriorated. The Dow will go. They're focused on the Dow.
Reporting for Springfield Station, Springfield, Massachusetts, and while
On the NASDAQ, everything and more has been completely
Stock
wiped out.
market is now down 21%.
This could be the most serious recession in decades.
We cannot simply stand by and watch this industry collapse.
It is definitely a very, very difficult time, and it's not going to get better quickly.
And he says he would like that shoreline of this.
While the world is in chaos, a signature could seal a deal that would transfer the ownership of arguably the most powerful company in the world. Two titans of the financial world could join forces, potentially creating the largest banking behemoth with a staggering $2.7 trillion in assets. A bank that was formed by Italian immigrants and built on the backs of hard-working immigrant farmers would now own one of the most prestigious names in the world of finance.
Bank of America would become the largest bank by assets in the country.
Bank of America could acquire Merrill Lynch, but that's what the world sees. Ken Lewis, CEO of Bank of America, however, sees something different. Power stays in the shadows, and by purchasing Merrill Lynch, he would also acquire nearly 50% of one of the most powerful asset managers in the world, BlackRock.
BlackRock's aggressive real estate expansion has ignited a serious debate. Critics argue BlackRock's market dominance push is inflating property prices and worsening the global housing crisis.
People have been in this game for 25 years, and they are losing their jobs, and these firms are going to go out of business, and he's nuts. They're nuts. They know nothing.
It was a collapse just about unprecedented in U.S. corporate history.
Good evening, everyone. The Bush administration and Congress are working out their differences over that $700 billion bailout.
On September 12th, Timothy F. Geithner, president of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, called a meeting on the future of Lehman, which includes the possibility of an emergency liquidation of its assets.
The cell phone started going off and they said, "You need to be down here at 6 o'clock. We want to talk to you."
I got a phone call about 5 o'clock saying, "Be at the Fed at 6 o'clock that evening."
Bankers representing all the major Wall Street firms are in attendance. The meeting goal is to find a private solution in rescuing Lehman and extinguish the flame of the global financial crisis.
They'd said to us, we collectively had to find a solution for this, and this is the important part. The government was not going to provide any form of assistance.
But there's more private talks going on in the background. Ken Lewis is not strictly against Bank of America buying Lehman Brothers. This could be a unique opportunity to acquire an undervalued asset. Even better if taxpayers can support a little bit. Then again, it might be the beginning of the end, because there are many more banks in line that are in massive trouble.
Well, you know, if we try to save Lehman Brothers, that's all great. But we're going to be back here next weekend, and we're going to be talking about Merrill.
But before Ken Lewis can decide on what to do with Lehman Brothers, John Thain, Merrill Lynch CEO, approaches Ken Lewis in a hideout. His firm is in a more deplorable condition, and if Ken Lewis signs Lehman Brothers, Merrill Lynch will automatically fail.
It's a little bit like you're in a very attractive boat that has a hole in it, and you're trying to bail, but more water's coming in faster than you can get it out. And
Merrill Lynch might not even survive past the weekend. Here's why. Merrill Lynch under Stan O'Neal has become the largest issuer of CDOs. In fact, by the end of 2008, Merrill Lynch has issued CDOs worth $136 billion while ensuring the same against collapse with AIG. This even forces AIG to stop insuring even the highest rated CDOs issued by Merrill Lynch because of its aggressive underwriting policies. But Merrill Lynch continues to do what makes the highest profits. So when John Thane learns that Ken Lewis is about to buy Lehman Brothers, he knows he can't let that happen. He proposes a deal against all odds. Bank of America acquiring shares of Merrill Lynch. Merrill is in a bad condition. Their stock is plummeting and they have just written off billions and billions of losses. At first glance you would say, of course, no one wants to buy them.
Everybody thought you were going to buy Lehman Brothers.
But what happens next is one of the biggest plot twists in finance history. Hank Paulson, Treasury Secretary, asks for a private conversation with Ken Lewis.
Paulson comes from the great breeds of masters of the universe that have come from Wall Street.
Hank Paulson knows that the situation is extremely serious.
And if I go down, I can now drag down that guy, and if he goes down, he can drag down that guy, and he can drag down that guy.
The details of their conversation will be revealed a year later, and they will spark controversies across the world of finance and politics. For now, there's just one message. Bank of America will buy Merrill Lynch in an all-stock deal worth $50 billion. It is one of the most important financial institutions in the USA and in the world, and it's now owned by Bank of America. But that's by far not everything.
So as we weighed everything, we said it is better to seize on this opportunity.
Merrill Lynch owns 49.8% of BlackRock, and this acquisition gives Bank of America control of almost half of BlackRock via their Merrill Lynch ownership.
Only 2 countries have a bigger GDP than what BlackRock has.
This acquisition makes Bank of America the #1 underwriter of global high-yield debt, the 3rd largest underwriter of global equity, and the 9th largest advisor on global mergers and acquisitions. If you listen to Bank of America at that time, they make it seem like this is a wonderful acquisition of a very healthy Wall Street firm. But unknown to the public, this firm is racking up losses in late 2008, and Bank of America is going to pay the price eventually. But we told you the official story, the story the public got to hear. In the next months and years following the 2008 financial crisis, the truth will be revealed and everyone will get into trouble. Bank of America, Merrill, their CEOs.
All of a sudden, this character who seemed like Clark Kent, who seemed like this great guy, this pillar of character and strength, was really the villain.
BlackRock, even Hank the Hammer.
So Hank Paulson, the happy capitalist warrior who spent his life pursuing and defending free markets, is now the biggest interventionist.
To understand the big picture and the consequences of this historic moment, we need to understand the inner workings of Bank of America, a bank that built the Golden Gate Bridge, saved Walt Disney from bankruptcy, and gave us credit cards. And it all starts with a son of Italian immigrants.
They're sharks, but they're not Wall Street sharks. It's a different type.
Through these hard economic times, the government is unable to raise revenue for constructing the proposed Golden Gate Bridge. We're proposing to issue a bond that will be financed by users. You're hereby requested to vote on the bond issue by the state of California in your respective counties. The bridge will be built tax-free out of a $35 million bond issue to be voted upon on November 4th, which will be repaid through revenue collected from users. Vote for the Golden Gate Bridge bond. Vote for prosperity.
In the 1920s, San Francisco is expanding rapidly. So naturally, the ferry service that links San Francisco Bay with Marin County is overwhelmed. Eventually, Parliament proposes a bridge to be built between these two counties. But it's the 1920s, during the Great Depression. People are jobless, some are homeless, most can't afford a meal a day. And you're telling them to buy government bonds for a bridge? So the government waits, and no one buys the bonds. That's until 1932, when a man comes to save the day, Amedeo Giannini.
This was a man of tremendous energy and passion, and he needed something to do. And fate handed him something to do.
It's a story of immigrants who refused to give up when every door closed on them.
The son of struggling immigrants created what was then the biggest bank in the world.
A.P. Giannini is a son of Italian immigrants after his parents migrated to the USA in the 1870s. Having grown up in poverty, even seeing his dad getting murdered because of a mere $1 debt and fighting his way through racist locals, A.P. Giannini knows he has only one job: lifting people out of poverty. And so when he marries into a rich real estate family and they hand him the keys to all their treasures for him to manage for them, his journey begins. First, he tries to convince the board of Columbus Savings and Loan that he was a part of to lend money to ordinary farmers and poor people, but they reject his plea. At 34 years old, he quits the board and starts his own bank, and partly with the inheritance from his father-in-law, and the Bank of Italy is formed. He grows the bank by lending money to working class people, sometimes by handshake only.
So he went to the people he knew from his years working on the wharf and said, if you will deposit your money with me, I will pay you a small amount of interest every month.
And his bank's reputation grows beyond borders. Soon everyone wants to bank with his bank. He starts what has come to be the standard in banking, the branch network. By 1930, the bank, through a number of mergers and acquisitions, is the largest bank in America with over 400 offices in California. So when the government issues a bond that no one wants to be part of, he steps up. A.P. Giannini sees this as an opportunity to cement his status in the country as a patriot. He offers to buy the entire Golden Gate Bridge government bond, $35 million, the whole lot. And the construction of the most iconic bridge in the world instantly begins.
The Golden Gate of San Francisco, one of the most difficult underwater construction feats ever attempted.
May 27th, 1937. Opening day, number one, was just for people. 200,000 people showed up and paid a nickel each to walk across.
It is a spectacle, a sight to behold, and it is all made possible by one man. That deal alone makes Bank of America one of the largest banks in America and the world. But their next deal will cement their status as a global finance powerhouse.
He financed the big Hollywood studios, and Giannini saved Walt Disney from bankruptcy.
On the night of February 13th, 1934, Walt Disney summons all his animators into an auditorium. For the next 4 hours, he tells them the story of Snow White, her cruel stepmother, the evil queen, and the 7 dwarfs. Then, he stops and looks them in the eye and tells them they are going to make Snow White and the 7 dwarfs into a feature-length motion picture. Something that has never been done before. A full 80-minute animation. Everyone thinks it's a costly mistake, that it will sink Disney. Even Disney's wife says nobody will pay a dime to see animated dwarfs for 80 straight minutes. Disney is devastated. He knows it will cost an enormous amount of money, especially in the midst of the crippling depression. But he has a dream, and he won't let it die. He channels all his resources to make the film, even putting up his own house as a collateral. But partway through the expensive production, the studio runs out of money. Stopping the production now means losing all the money already used, which includes losing his house. They can't stop. It's do or die. They need a huge bank loan. But what bank would finance a risky full-length animated feature film? And that's when his business acumen hits him. He knows seeing is believing. To secure a $250K loan, he would have to show the bank a half-finished movie. He doesn't want to do it, but he knows he has no choice. He invites the vice president of the Bank of America over for a screening. They sit alone in a theater watching the partially finished movie as he nervously explains what is yet to come. When the lights come back up, the vice president stands up and walks out of the projection room into the sunshine. And then he yawns. Disney's heart sinks. It was his only shot, and he failed. A dream shuttered, and all he can think about is they are about to be homeless. But then, just before he leaves, the banker turns around and says,
"Walt, that picture will make a pot full of money."
And just like that, Bank of America finances the whole movie until it is fully done.
On December 21st, 1937, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs premiered to a record-breaking audience at the Carthay Circle Theater in Los Angeles. More than 30,000 fans who couldn't score one of the $5 tickets gathered outside the theater just to be a part of the historic event.
It earns $8 million during its initial release against a $1.5 million budget, becoming the highest-grossing film of 1937. But Bank of America doesn't stop there. They go full throttle on investments. Next, they invent something that will revolutionize the world of banking. And chances are, it's in your pocket too. In line with its appetite for risk-taking, Bank of America now goes to the heart of America's economy, the middle class. They have seen the rise of the middle class and are certain that that is where the money's at, but not literally. Back then and still today, the middle class wants to appear rich. They want to buy the latest luxury items, and they want to get everything instantly, even with nothing in their bank accounts. They want cash to spend now and pay later. Sounds familiar? When Bank of America sees this opportunity, they pounce on it. They send out thousands of credit cards for free to its loyal customers with a pre-approved rate of $300 per month, and the middle class goes on a frenzy. It's like that first shot of energy in the bank's restrooms during an all-nighter. You get hooked instantly, but with big risks come big losses. It's a disaster, a costly error. The delinquency rates are over 20% with rampant fraud everywhere. But Bank of America doesn't abandon its vision. They hold on to it, making Americans one of the most indebted nations on earth.
Americans are falling deeper into credit card debt that they can't pay off. Americans are digging themselves into a deep financial hole approaching $1 trillion in credit card debt.
And it all started with one credit card now known as Visa. And Bank of America was the culprit behind it all. But that is nothing compared to what happens next. Bank of America goes on a never-seen-before acquisition frenzy, and they will come face to face with one of the greatest financial institutions ever and its CEO, the man many people blame for the losses and sufferings of the financial crisis. Merrill Lynch was once the epitome of everything good in Wall Street. In fact, it has been credited with bringing Wall Street to Main Street.
Charles Merrill instituted a very ethical approach to dealing with the retail investor that nobody else had done that before. Investigate, then invest. That was the byword of Merrill Lynch back in those days.
But by 2007, investors have lost almost all confidence in the firm, withdrawing more than $34 billion on a net basis from Merrill's stock and bond funds since 1998. And it starts with the appointment of Ernest Stanley O'Neal as Chief Executive Officer of Merrill Lynch in February 2002.
In a recent report by Time magazine, he has been named one of the top 25 people to blame for the financial crisis.
Stanley is born into poverty in Roanoke, Alabama. He's the grandson of a former slave.
My grandfather, James O'Neal, was born into slavery in 1861. He was eventually able to carve out a life for himself and his family through hard work and perseverance.
Growing up in abject poverty teaches him to be ferocious, to pounce on any opportunity that comes his way. And so while picking cotton and corn in his grandfather's fields, he also ventures into selling and delivering newspapers. His early ambitions and megalomaniac thirst for success will catapult him into one of the most powerful positions on Wall Street. His hard work doesn't go unnoticed when he starts working at the General Motors assembly line, and this is where his star shines brighter. GM gives him a scholarship to attend Harvard Business School, the source of all that is good and evil in Wall Street. Within 2 years, he gets promoted as a director in the Treasury Division of General Motors, and by 1987, he joins Merrill Lynch's Leveraged Finance Division.
In 1987, I joined Merrill Lynch and spent close to the next 21 years of my life there, eventually being named president in the summer of 2001.
Stanley proves that he has one very important ingredient to being a true Wall Street titan: ruthlessness. He's so obsessed with layoffs that in every appointment he gets, his first goal is to lay off non-performing departments. Zero empathy, zero consideration, 100% Bateman vibes. He instantly disrupts the beloved work culture of Mother Merrill, quickly sending a shivering message: Merrill Lynch is not your mother. This works like magic to charm Merrill's board of directors, because by 2000 he gets appointed as the president of the firm, a first in a series of poor decisions made by Merrill Lynch. He assumes the throne and sets his eyes on one goal: beating the undisputed leader in trading at their own game.
On a street obsessed with money and power, Goldman Sachs, with more than $150 billion in assets, is the powerhouse.
But unbeknownst to O'Neal, his ambitions will actually bring the firm to the brink of extinction. His first order of business? He wants to try ousting the current CEO, a man who had been his mentor since joining the firm in 1986.
At Merrill Lynch, David Kamansky spent his career battling Goldman Sachs, but now the former Merrill boss is defending his longtime rival.
Stanley strikes a deal with Thomas Patrick, the then vice president, and Arshad Zakaria, the head of corporate risk management. He asks them to support his ouster of David Kamansky and help him ascend to the CEO position, and in return, he would make Zakaria the president of the firm. A risky endeavor that could massively backfire.
Today it was announced that David Kamansky is leaving the role as CEO and will instead be replaced by Ernest Stanley O'Neal.
Stanley gets promoted to the Chief Executive Officer position, kicking out his mentor. But in the style of a real megalomaniac, Stanley O'Neal fails to fulfill his end of the bargain of appointing Zakaria as president.
On Tuesday morning, Mr. Patrick, together with his 2 secretaries and a chauffeur, were escorted from the building by 4 security guards.
His computers are unplugged and his email account is immediately shut down.
The details of Mr. Patrick's departure suggest that E. Stanley O'Neal, Merrill's chief executive, may have had a deeper, more calculated motive in urging his second-in-command to step down.
O'Neal's next course of action? Firing everyone who disagrees with him until no one with a brain is left in the firm. And so the downfall of the mighty Merrill begins. Investors begin withdrawing their money and Merrill's reputation deteriorates. They need to fix this ASAP or Merrill will be no more. So in comes the knight in shining armor. Stanley O'Neal was never a broker. In fact, he's the only CEO of Merrill who had not served as a broker prior to his appointment. So when he joins the firm as CEO, he has no clue how to steer the ship.
But it is clear to me in today's world that it was a mistake.
And the fact that he's not willing to learn makes it even worse. He goes on to fire everyone who dares question his actions. He's so full of power that he forces the security guards to always hold an entire elevator bank open exclusively for him. So when he fires Chris Ricciardi in 2006 as global head of fixed income, Merrill Lynch tribulations begin. And who replaces him? Osman Semerci. Hold on to that name because it will be very important in the next few minutes. You see, before 2007, cash inflows received by Merrill from CDO transactions related to residential mortgages equaled virtually zero. But when Osman joins the firm to head the division, the firm's position in these instruments goes from 5 to 6 billion worth of exposure to 55 billion in under 1 year. Sounds reasonable. And then it gets worse. O'Neal fires respected trader Jeff Kronthal while demoting risk manager John Bright, a grave mistake. Why? These two had warned against too much exposure to CDOs. They knew a storm was coming, and their departure opens the floodgates of all ill-timed decisions that Merrill Lynch does going forward.
I think he lost a little bit, Mr. O'Neal lost a little bit of credibility with the board when the from what we've heard, various reports that he reported, met with the board and expected a certain loss, and then when the results come out later and there's a wider loss, that was kind of played into a little bit of a loss of credibility.
Within 1 year, Merrill Lynch undergoes the typical meme coin trajectory, going from Mother Merrill to a valueless piece of Wall Street junk with over 117 billion worth of exposure to the troubled collateralized debt obligations. While Goldman executives are canceling vacations to deal with the burgeoning subprime crisis, O'Neal is often on the golf course, playing round after round by himself. And guess who's running the trading department? Our guy, Osman Semerci. Osman eliminates almost all checks and balances for minimizing risk and actually encourages more exposure to the CDOs. In fact, Merrill goes so far as purchasing First Franklin Financial Corp., one of the largest subprime lenders in the country, to provide an endless supply of these CDOs. But people are watching and their confidence is dwindling. Investors begin withdrawing their money from Merrill Lynch, and it is here that Stanley O'Neal realizes it's time to do something. He goes out on a hunt to find someone who will redeem Merrill Lynch, someone who can give Merrill Lynch their Midas touch back, and someone investors across the world trust. He goes to BlackRock, and they strike a deal. Merrill Lynch will sell its asset management business to BlackRock for a 49.5% stake in the combined entity. This makes the new firm the largest asset management firm with AUM of $1 trillion. Merrill's stake in BlackRock would be worth more than $9 billion, according to analysts' estimates. Merrill Lynch is also given a 45% voting interest in the combined company, effectively making BlackRock and Merrill Lynch Siamese twins. And once again, the day is saved. Investors are happy, clients are happy, everybody is happy. Merrill Lynch goes back to the top of the food chain, and Stanley can go back to his vacation. Right? Wrong. Because now things fall apart. Whatever strings O'Neal played to convince Larry Fink to sign off on this deal should be studied, because had BlackRock realized that Merrill Lynch was already in deep trouble with their subprime mortgages, they would have not gone ahead with the deal. By the following year, in October 2007, Merrill Lynch's revenue falls 94% to $577 million from $9.83 billion a year earlier. All along, these CDOs were worthless, but had been cropped up to appear stable. And when consumers begin defaulting on their mortgages, the CDO's prices continue plummeting. So Stanley decides to do what he does best, making stupid decisions. He goes behind his board's back and approaches Bank of America to buy out Merrill Lynch. But someone snitches and the board learns of his mischief. This is like hearing from your neighbor that your father is selling your house to some stranger tomorrow without your knowledge. The board decides enough is enough, albeit too late. They fire Stanley and give him a small send-off for a work well done. $200 million. Are you kidding me? What the hell, man? This is... I can't believe this, man. 200 million. What? I mean, what the hell is going on? 200 million? All right, where are we?
This week, directors of investment bank Merrill Lynch forced out its chief executive officer, Stan O'Neal.
He's replaced by John Thane in December 2007, but too bad for him because he finds the house of cards has already begun collapsing, and yet he follows in predecessors' footsteps. While firms like Goldman Sachs and Bank of America are betting against these CDOs through credit default swaps, Merrill Lynch under John Thane continues holding on to them to give a false impression that they have everything under control. But numbers never lie, and by the end of 2008, they are losing $52 million daily, or $19 billion that year.
I apologize for spending that money on those things, and I will make it right.
What O'Neal and his successor John Thane don't know is that already a couple of years earlier, Bank of America is getting into the mood of buying everything they can lay their hands on at a solid discount.
We bank every other American family, in America.
You what?
We bank every other American family in the United States.
No.
Yeah.
Half the country.
Mm-hmm.
Up until now, Bank of America has transformed itself into one of the most beloved banks in America. 50% of Americans have business with the bank. In fact, it's the largest bank in America, followed by JP Morgan and Chase Bank. But the higher they go, the harder they fall. And the man behind its downfall is none other than...
As it's been said, my name is Ken Lewis, and I'm Chief Executive Officer of Bank of America. I came from a very modest beginning, and my mother raised my sister and I, so a one-parent family, and she was a nurse.
When he joins the company in 2001, he finds a slow-growing bank that's been slow to exercise its huge market share and power. And so he does what every megalomaniac does best. He goes on a shopping spree.
He wrote out a wish list of companies he wanted to acquire or businesses he wanted to be in. And one by one, year after year, he made that happen.
The way B of A accomplished this was by buying the #1 company in virtually every category of banking.
And so if you think about it most broadly, what happened? Between 2003 and 2009, our company had done 6 or 7 major acquisitions.
But these ill-timed acquisitions begin causing trouble within the banking halls. One such ill-timed purchase is the acquisition of MBNA, the world's largest independent credit card issuer, for $35 billion in cash and stock. Unbeknownst to Ken, he has taken on a whole bunch of bad consumer debt that would haunt them for the next few years. Yet, trying to correct his mistakes, he digs himself deeper into the hole.
In 2008, Bank of America acquired Countrywide Financial.
They guarantee Bank of America a return on investment of 7.25% per annum on a price of $18 per share.
We don't have exact figures, but it looks like Countrywide shareholders lost almost all of the $2.5 billion the company spent on repurchasing shares when you were selling stock.
Countrywide basically hands itself to Bank of America on a silver platter, but in reality, they are hiding something more sinister. They are close to the brink of bankruptcy. This purchase makes Bank of America the leading mortgage originator and servicer in the US, controlling 20 to 25% of the home loan market.
And when Bank of America took that on, it took on a huge burden of debt and a sort of toxic environment and toxic asset that in many ways dragged the bank down.
Countrywide Financial has been involved in some illegal activities in their subprime mortgage department, sometimes coercing its customers to refinance their mortgage and thereby providing them with more mortgage securities to sell to investors. So in March 2008, the FBI begins investigating Countrywide for possible fraud relating to home loans and mortgages.
Countrywide had been implicated in the mortgage crisis. Countrywide had also engaged in predatory and racist lending practices.
While Bank of America largely avoids being dragged into the subprime mortgage mania of the 2000s, it's these subsidiaries and acquisitions that ultimately rope them in.
It's said that one of the main reasons the bank is doing well is because of your decision not to get into subprime mortgages.
In 2001, my first year as CEO, we decided that we just didn't like the business. It was too risky, and so we decided to get out of it.
But they enabled this mania by providing liquidity to these failing mortgage and investment banks to continue reaping Americans off, and then the crash happens.
Apple's up more than 6% right now.
What the market giveth, the market also taketh away.
The stock market is now down 21%.
This could be the most serious recession in decades.
It is definitely a very, very difficult time, and it's not going to get better quickly.
And Ken Lewis, doing what he does best, buying everything and anything, appends his signature to one of the biggest financial transactions in history.
Meanwhile, Merrill Lynch, fearing it could be next, agreed in an act of desperation to a shotgun marriage with Bank of America.
Merrill Lynch is this hugely prestigious brand.
Bank of America and Merrill crow about creating a financial giant unrivaled in its breadth of financial services and global reach. Bank of America executives emphasize Merrill's great global franchise and its extensive network of financial advisors. But that's not all. Underneath the contract is the acquisition of 49.8% of BlackRock, making the new combined company the largest company in the world based on assets under management. There's just one problem. It's all a big fake show. When the deal to buy Merrill Lynch for $50 billion was announced in September 2008, Lehman Brothers was preparing to file for bankruptcy, and by the time the deal closed in January 2009, Merrill Lynch's health had deteriorated even more. Internal calculations showed that Merrill, which had billions of dollars in toxic mortgage assets, had a massive pre-tax loss in excess of $10 billion for October and November 2008. And December was looking even worse. Losses continued piling up, but executives were pushing forward to close the deal by January 2009. Bank executives even worried that Merrill Lynch would have a fourth quarter loss of at least $16 billion.
The assets continue to deteriorate. There were people inside Bank of America who felt like this number was big enough to disclose.
But there was no public disclosure of that internal forecast. In court documents, lawyers for Mr. Lewis have said that he was aware of the staggering losses heading into the shareholder meetings, but that after discussions with lawyers, he concluded that an interim disclosure was not necessary because the crucial regulatory filing in support of the merger did not contain projections on Merrill's fourth quarter results, according to a court filing.
The losses, though large, were not out of line with losses Merrill had experienced in prior quarters, and investors were well aware that banks were sustaining significant losses as the economy deteriorated.
And so the drama started unfolding. On December 5th, shareholders of each company voted to approve the deal and sign their fate. On January 16th, weeks after the deal had closed, the bailout was announced, along with Merrill's fourth quarter net loss of $15.31 billion.
The stock market has been falling day after day, and now news that the biggest banks need more money.
It shocked the market. Even though the market was looking for something bad, it wasn't expecting that. It wasn't expecting a $15 billion loss.
Shareholders, unaware of the severity of the losses in late 2008, were furious.
They want to know why these losses weren't disclosed earlier.
Neither Mr. Thain nor Mr. Lewis survived the debacle. A week after the bailout is announced, Mr. Lewis flies to New York from Charlotte to see Mr. Thain, telling him the board blames him for the losses. Mr. Thain took this meeting for what it was, a firing. In April 2009, Bank of America shareholders stripped Mr. Lewis of the title of chairman. Later that year, he steps down as chief executive, leaving us with the question, why did Lewis and the other Bank of America management push for this deal? Well, one reason was revealed just a year after the deal.
You have to buy Merrill, and we will make sure that happens. Up to and including removal of management.
I served as Secretary of the Treasury from July 2006 to January 2009. During my tenure, the world experienced a financial crisis unprecedented in our lifetimes. The crisis presented a relentless series of novel challenges that required swift, innovative, and dramatic responses. Some have suggested that there was something inappropriate about my conversation of December 21st with Mr. Lewis. It was also appropriate for me to remind him that under such circumstances, the Federal Reserve could invoke its authority to remove management and the board of Bank of America. I've been pretty direct. I wouldn't use the word threat, but I've said what I said, and I was very direct, and I intended to give a very direct, strong, clear message.
One question remains, does Bank of America still own some BlackRock? No, because 1 year later, it's all over again. Larry Fink comes back to his senses after realizing what a bad deal that was. He buys out the stake held by Merrill Lynch and backs out of the marriage, restoring BlackRock as an independent financial institution. As they both go on their way, Bank of America and Merrill Lynch remain together after 2009, growing even bigger after the crisis and becoming the second largest bank in America today with over $3.18 trillion in assets. Eventually, the deal turns out to be one of the most consequential deals for Bank of America, with a subsidiary generating $3.7 billion of Bank of America's $4.2 billion in profit by the end of Q1 in 2009 and over 25% in Q3 of 2009.
Well, we didn't like being small. I mean, there's nothing really attractive about being small.